The proposed changes to the California Public Records Act, or CPRA, were originally embedded in the state's new budget as a way to cut costs. California reimburses local governments for their cost of providing public access to those records. But after outrage from the public and media over proposed changes that would have meant cities, counties, and school districts could opt out of providing public records with no explanation, Sacramento lawmakers revised the bill, restoring the PRA to its original state. Here to talk more about the cost of democracy and the public's right to know is Voice of San Diego's Scott Lewis. Welcome back.
Thank you, Peggy.
Scott, remind us of when the CPRA passed and why it was passed in the first place.
Well, I believe it was Ronald Reagan in 1972. It's a basic accountability and transparency measure. You know, if the public's business is public, we should be able to request virtually all documents. There's a lot of exceptions for personnel issues, for negotiations or litigation issues. But by and large, you should be able to see what government's doing, and this was a requirement that all local governments, not just the state, do that.
What were the proposed changes, if you could kind of highlight those for us?
Well, so for example, when you ask for a public document, so you request it, they have 10 days to let you know that they got that request. And then they have some time to let you know if they're going to comply, and then comply, and then they can explain why not. They're supposed to explain why they reject it, what law, what they're referring to, how the documents correspond to some exception, and then you can challenge that. The problem with California's law is that ultimately there's no teeth. So even as it exists, to actually get something done, if you are in a loggerheads with an agency, you have to sue them eventually. But it's still a requirement. It's a law that they're supposed to provide that. So investigative journalists, citizens, academics, all kinds.
Businesses.
Yeah, use these things. Political candidates use these requests to get information, do investigations, and hold their government accountable. See if there's things that can be done more efficiently, or just tell stories.
And as journalists, and you in particular over Voice of San Diego, you use this quite a bit to get data. In particular, there was a story here in San Diego County that was dismissed because of public notice. Do you recall that story with Walter Eckerd?
There's all kinds of issues. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that exact one you're referring to, but there's all kinds of issues that come up all the time where they reject a public records request, and it's often, sometimes they don't just reject it. They say we'll give you those records, but it's $75,000 or something. You know, like, so you end up
prohibitive.
Yeah, obviously.
Right.
So you have to fight these things. And look, we're fine with the fight as it is. California's is one of the weakest public records laws. I mean, something like Florida is much stronger. But you know,
we're weak because there's no consequences if they don't comply. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And so this provision would have allowed local governments to opt out and to not tell you why they were going to reject something. But more importantly, so we could have trusted like the city council of the city and others to comply because we would have shamed them into it. It's the little districts that we were worried about, the Sweetwater school districts, the water districts, all these public agencies that don't get enough attention, that might have taken the governor's option and said, hey, we're not going to comply this year.
Let's talk about the new Assembly member, Lorena Gonzalez. And Voice of San Diego revealed a Twitter conversation between her and local journalists, including you. What did she say?
Well, she was in a weird position because we're saying, why are you going to support this thing? And she
support the changes.
Yeah, this change is one of her first votes as an assemblywoman, and it's like, why are you going to put this on your record? This is a pretty negative stain. And she said, well, it was paired with a workers' protection bill, worker protections that were in a trailer bill for the whole budget. She's like, look, I can't vote against that, and so I guess I have to support this too.
So it sort of just came along.
So she was in a tough spot, but that's, you know, at the same time that they passed this bill, they also raised their own salaries. So here they are cutting, you know, we have to make cuts, so we're gonna gut the public access law, reduce public access to information, but we're also going to give ourselves a higher pay. So the framing of this just became disastrous for Democrats, and that's what provoked the changes. Ultimately, the head of the Senate in California was resistant to changes, but he decided to change his much.
Yeah, and then they were amended. So what's next?
Well, what's next is not only did they reverse their decisions, but now there's pledges to actually embed this into the Constitution. So it's not just a law, but actually part of our Constitution in California, which would help the state also avoid some of these problems with reimbursement. We'll see if it does. It's also an opportunity to make it a stronger law, too.
Yeah, absolutely. So Scott Lewis with Voice of San Diego, thanks so much for the update.
Thanks, Peggy.